I tell you what, it's not like the olden days. I'm Jake.
I'm Rosie.
And this is a podcast on the 1999 animated Warner Brothers feature, The Iron Giant. Now, when I was at school, I was read The Iron Man by Ted Hughes on more than one occasion, I think. And it was always published in the US, incidentally, as The Iron Giant. Obviously, they didn't think they could sell it without specifying that the man, made of iron, was also giant to the American market.
Wasn't it also something to do with getting confused with the superhero?
Oh yes, Iron Man. Yes, that's probably the real reason, and the first bit was just me being sceptical. And one of the last things that Ted Hughes ever did before his death in 1998 was sanction and approve the script for the movie The Iron Giant. And what a good decision of his that was, because it's a very good movie. I should think Warner Brothers were feeling very jelly about the huge success that Disney had had in the 90s, relaunching their animated movie franchise and getting all sorts of success from that. Whereas Warner Brothers, the most successful thing they produced during the 90s was Animaniacs. So they came up with the rather good idea of producing the Iron Giant animated feature film.
Better than Space Jam.
Yes, well, they certainly were onto a stinker with that one. But apparently it didn't do too well at the box office, didn't make a profit or even break even, and Wikipedia blames bad advertising and promotion, or Wikipedia says people blame bad advertising and promotion. Apparently it later garnered something of a cult following, as it is called, or it became popular later on, and I think it was released on DVD last year as a kind of relaunch and was quite popular. So it's a bit of a slow burner, perhaps, for its popularity, The Iron Giant. So perhaps it didn't give Warner Brothers the immediate success they were craving, but certainly now, according to Wikipedia, it's considered a modern animated classic. The most memorable bit, I think, of the book The Iron Man, or The Iron Giant if you're American, is the denouement involving the space bat angel dragon, which I always thought was a bit stupid and didn't really fit in with the rest of the story. And that is the one aspect, I think, that they completely abandoned to make the movie, and instead there's a denouement involving a nuclear weapons strike, because the setting for the film is the 50s, Cold War, worrying about Russians and nuclear armament, climate of fear sort of thing. Which it's a very interesting backdrop in which to set your movie or TV show, and I think it's a big part of the film's success how well that's pulled off. We were saying just now how we couldn't really remember much else that happened in The Iron Man, the book, or you were, and I was agreeing.
Yes, I was trying to remember what Hogarth the boy actually does. He certainly doesn't do any of the things he does in the film. The other characters in the film aren't in it, book that is. I think all Hogarth really does, and I could be wrong because I can't remember at all, but I think he is the first to accept the Iron Man and consider that he might not be a threat.
That's right, there's a lot of fear in the community, isn't there, and trying to fight the Iron Man rather than understand him, and Hogarth is the one who finds the way to deal with him, which is with kindness, not force, and that certainly makes it through to the film as a very big plot point and theme point, and I suppose it's inspired the Cold War stuff and has expanded into a theme for the whole movie. When we were watching The Iron Giant a few weeks ago, I was struck by, and I said to Rosie, the fact that they were very pleased with, proud of, and really wanting to showcase all their fantastic new computer animation, sweeping into the earth from space kind of graphics. And I said something like, oh, they're very proud of that, aren't they? It's a good thing the film is properly written, properly acted and hasn't been approached from the point of view of, oh, let's show off all these lovely new graphics, rather than let's make a very good film adaptation of the Iron Giant set in the Cold War. And I think that was a fair comment, wasn't it?
Yes, well, it's certainly a very good film, and I think the CG animation is used quite appropriately. It all is part of the story, unlike that awful A Christmas Carol film that Disney made, for instance, with Jim Carrey doing the voice of Scrooge, where they did all these CG action sequences for the sake of it.
And it's a different form of animation, but I thought recently when we watched Coraline that kind of CG stop motion thing was the driving force behind the movie, what they could do with it, with the button eyes and everything, rather than the story. So it's better, I think, to come away with a sense of the movie was made for the right reasons, rather than to showcase a particular style of movie making. And continuing with that point, they're obviously pleased to be able to do, for the first time, with the denouement that I was mentioning, the Iron Giant's various abilities, which we don't see throughout the movie and come into play at the end, which aren't in the book, such as sprouting guns, start shooting people, and flying and launching missiles that make mushroom clouds in the middle of the ocean and stuff. And in a poorer quality film, in a film with less depth, that could kind of be the main crux, the main selling point of the film. It's like, oh wow, look at this, explosions, bang, that's fantastic. Rather like Man of Steel, in my opinion. But fortunately, by the end, these big CG special effects are quite organically included in the movie. They don't seem forced, they don't seem inappropriate, because we've already had all the fantastic themes and character development and investment that we need. So that's fine. It's well done, it's well judged, and that just goes to show any form of artistic expression, such as huge CG explosions, can be used appropriately and convincingly and strikingly and in the right way. It just has to be done properly, judiciously, organically, which the Iron Giant does. I said before it was acted well, acted properly. Let's talk about some of the voice work. It has some voices, some actors that we have enjoyed in that and other things. We call him the Funny Man, and his name is Christopher McDonald, and he plays the government agent Kent Mansley in the film, who's the primary antagonist, is the best way to describe him, I should think. And we've laughed at him being very amusing in other films, such as Thelma and Louise and Superhero Movie, and some of the American Pie movies, which we'll come back to in a moment, because there's another link to them.
Yes, we were calling him the Funny Man because we'd recognised him from Superhero Movie, where he's hilarious, in American Pie The Naked Mile, I think.
It's those spin-off ones, middle ones.
And said, oh, it's that Funny Man, isn't he funny? He's the best bit of this American Pie film.
He was.
And then I was looking him up on the Internet Movie Database, and I was like, good lord, he's Daryl in Thelma and Louise, because we hadn't realised that. And I also found out recently that he's a character called Goose in Grease 2, which I found very surprising. Grease 2 is even worse than Space Jam, but let's talk about that now. And I think he's quite funny in The Iron Giant too, isn't he?
Yeah, a comedy performance from Christopher McDonald can lift parts of a bad film, like Grease 2, or really add to a good film, like Thelma and Louise or The Iron Giant. So he's fantastic. It was interesting, good, fun to hear John Mahoney, I don't know how you pronounce it properly.
Could be Marnie or something like that, not sure.
As the Army General, a smallish part, but very well done. We were very familiar with him as Frasier's dad, Martin, from Frasier, when we first watched it, which was quite an interesting story in itself, actually. We stumbled across it one Saturday afternoon in the early 2000s, probably it was its TV premiere, and weren't particularly doing anything or feeling particularly happy or enthusiastic, and the Iron Giant was a nice surprise, and we really engaged with it and hadn't been expecting to at all. So we came back and watched it again, recorded it when it was on TV a few years later, so it was striking and memorable.
I seem to remember when we found it was a little way in, so we didn't actually watch it from the beginning, and we were quite keen to do so.
Yes, we were. We didn't see the initial interaction between Hogarth and the Iron Giant, which is very important, of course, to the whole journey the movie takes us on.
Of course, John Mulaney has a very recognisable voice, doesn't he? And I expect we also recognise the voice of Jennifer Aniston as Annie, Hogarth's mom. And it's a bit of a shame. She's the only female character, and they don't really do anything with her. She's just the mom. Of course, Ted Hughes was a bit sexist, wasn't he, as you'll discover if you read The Iron Woman. And when they were making the film, obviously they couldn't think of anything very interesting for Hogarth's mom to do.
Yes, I was wondering, coming into this, do I think that Jennifer Aniston is just the sort of, she was popular at the time and some other talented voice actress could have done something better with it. But no, I don't think that's the case at all. It's just there's really nothing to the character. She's the mom, and that's all there is to it. And Jennifer Aniston can, of course, be very funny on Friends, so I don't think it's her fault at all. But there she is, and, she does what needs to be done. She plays the mom. I guess you believe she loves Hogarth and worries about him, but she does very mommy things, like telling him not to go out in the woods at night with his BB gun and stuff, the sort of thing. And again, the character Dean, who's the main grown-up male protagonist sort of character, is quite generic, isn't he? I mean, he's quite well done. The actor's called Harry Connick Jr. I'm not sure if he's famous for playing beatniks or anything, but again, he's not the most striking and original character in the movie that you really engage with, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, I think so, although the makers of it might be disappointed to hear that. I think that they think he's very funny with his art that he makes out of scrap metal and stuff, and his getting swept away when the Iron Giant dives in the lake and all that kind of thing.
And it's true that he is funny and he is well done, but he's just not a really crucially audience-grabbing part of the film. I think, like, as you say, they were probably hoping he would be.
He does convince Frasier's dad not to destroy the Iron Giant when he works out that when he sprouts guns and starts shooting people, he's only reacting defensively, and he is an important part of the plot.
Yes, so he's got more to him than the mom character in that way, certainly.
All they can really think to do with her, apart from tell Hogarth not to do this, not to do that, is to give her a ship with Dean, and it's very annoying. The arguably one bit of characterization they do try and give her is very inconsistent, because he's hiding the Iron Giant from the funny man by pretending that he's art that he's made, and then Jennifer Aniston saying, "Oh, I don't know if I like that bit of art. It doesn't seem like you've really thought it through. I like this art over here." And she's looking at this sculpture, and he's like, "Oh, you like my sculptures? Nobody else likes my sculptures." But then at the end, when they're a couple, she starts not understanding his art and making jokes about how it doesn't make any sense.
Kind of epitomises the two characters there, really. You need them for the film. They're adequately done, but they're not completely consistent or everything they could be. Quite interesting. Let's talk about Vin Diesel as the Iron Giant. The only thing I'd ever seen him in was a film called The Pacifier, in which he played, well, it was basically Mr. Nanny with Hulk Hogan, except it had Vin Diesel instead of Hulk Hogan, because he's this kind of tough guy who ends up being a nanny or looking after these kids. He's some sort of secret service agent protecting them. They've got some DVD that the government wants or something in this film, The Pacifier. But that's all I'd seen him in anyway. And so I didn't have particular thoughts about him as an actor, but Fast and the Furious, that's what he's famous for, and I'm sure that's a load of adrenaline-fueled fluff. But goodness me, doesn't he do extraordinarily well with the relatively small in terms of voice work role, but extremely crucial role of the Iron Giant, the title character. He doesn't have a lot to say, but goodness me, what a lot he has to do with the things he does have to say.
Yes, even when he's first trying to copy Hogarth and learning to speak. And all he's saying is, "Rock." You get a lot of humour out of that, and then he starts to pick up sort of, well, it's like a child learning to talk, sort of fragments of sentences. And there's this very moving scene where someone shot this deer, which is absolutely unbearable, and Hogarth is explaining about dying, and he says, "It's bad to kill, but it's not bad to die." And they have this discussion about souls don't die, and it's absolutely tear-inducing and emotionally very difficult.
And what fantastic work Vin Diesel does there, getting all that emotion and discovery of new emotion and coming to terms with it, of the Iron Giant character, into just a few words and little noises, reactionary noises that they then match the animation to. Extraordinarily well done. Obviously, Hogarth has a huge part to play in that scene. We'll talk about him in just a moment.
Of course, that scene has got the first hint that there might be something dangerous about the Iron Giant. He's seeing the rifle lying on the ground and his eyes start to go red and you think, oh, what's going on? And then Hogarth sort of interrupts him and starts talking about death and stuff.
Yes, and that reminds me how it's very good that there's complete ambiguity about where the Iron Giant comes from. He comes from the sky, like the Thundercats, and crash lands in the ocean, so he's some sort of alien or alien war machine, I suppose, because he's obviously designed to seek and destroy, to kill, and the very powerful and moving conclusion of the film, of course, involves the Iron Giant making his own choice, as Hogarth has told him he can and should, not to be a gun, but to choose to use his abilities for good, like Dumbledore tells us. It's choices that make us who we are, not what we're capable of. The Iron Giant is capable of obliterating thousands, millions of people at one time with his missiles, if he wants, but he chooses to be a good guy because of Hogarth's influence and friendship and love, which is very nice and very well done in the film. And I think on the movie database, Internet Movie Database, some people come on and say, where did he come from? They didn't explain. And they're obviously people who don't appreciate the value of ambiguity in things, because it's much more powerful and interesting that we don't know.
Probably some of the same people who want Frozen to explain why Elsa has magic powers.
Because some people do in that universe.
For goodness sake. But of course, not only does he decide not to obliterate everyone in the entire world, he actually decides not to retaliate when he's being attacked by aeroplanes and stuff, and his eyes are going red, and then he's going, no, and looking away and stuff, and that's a very good bit.
Very well done by Vin Diesel again.
All he said was no.
No! Absolutely brilliant. So yeah, not only is he choosing not to be aggressive, but he's going against his own programming and choosing not to react violently if he's attacked, which I guess is something we should all do at times to become better people, and the Iron Giant does it.
Yes, that's why it's a very good film for everyone to watch. It's very funny, and it's also unbearably emotional, and films and books and TV shows and things like that are the best ones.
Definitely. Complete mix. Take you on an emotional roller coaster and you feel harangued but satisfied at the end. We'll come back to what the Iron Giant does at the end in a few moments and talk about the denouement, which will probably be the last main point we talk about. But finishing off talking about the characters and voice work, we'll talk about Hogarth, who is, of course, the main character in the film, the protagonist of the film. He's given the surname Hughes, as is his mother, which is the surname of Ted Hughes, and that's why they have it. Can we suppose that his dad has been killed in some sort of conflict? Do they have a picture of him in army uniform or something, or I've completely made that up?
Well, you might be thinking of The Princess and the Frog, where there's a picture of the dad in army uniform and he's dead, but perhaps they've got one too, I can't really remember.
No, his dad's not around anyway, and Hogarth seems to have some sort of influence of the glorification of war somewhere in his development. He has his BB gun. He goes out to defend the USA from Russians, although it turns out to be the Iron Giant. He's kind of playing at it, isn't he? And you can see that his deeper character is very noble and very peace-loving, and that's what he passes on to the Iron Giant. He likes all the comic book heroes and encourages the Iron Giant to be like Superman, as Vin Diesel said. So that's Hogarth's true character, but I think there's been some sort of influence of glorification of stand up for America with your BB gun before he actually comes into the real experience of meeting the Iron Giant and helping him to shape his feelings and thinking about it properly, rather than just as an abstract idea of war as something glorious. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yes, of course, you see him at school having all the Cold War propaganda, don't you? Duck and cover.
That's right. It could just all be stuff that's been rammed down his throat at school and on the telly and be nothing to do with his father. But they usually make something of absent fathers, so I wouldn't be surprised if it was hinted at with a photograph at some point.
Yes, I just don't remember thinking anything except, well, they don't tell us about his father.
No.
One thing I did think, slight tangent here, is that perhaps children had a difficult time engaging with the Cold War stuff because the target audience wouldn't have learned about it in school yet. They might not really have heard about it from their parents. Certainly in this country, I don't know about America. And I think when I was under 10, I wouldn't have understood what that was all about. So maybe in some ways it wasn't as accessible as Beauty and the Beast and that kind of thing.
That's very true. The themes and setting are extremely good and extremely poignant and extremely well done, but perhaps not extremely accessible, at least immediately, to the target audience. Yes, I think that's certainly true.
They wouldn't understand why some of the characters have a huge problem with Russia, for instance.
First foreign satellite in space, Hogarth. Now, if we didn't like Hogarth, if we didn't engage with Hogarth as a character, if we didn't completely invest in his relationship with the Iron Giant and the emotional support and help and development they give each other in so many ways, we wouldn't like the film at all, would we?
No, it wouldn't be very interesting. We wouldn't care if the Iron Giant killed everybody or if everybody killed him.
Yeah. Now, obviously, the animation's got to be up to creating that relationship, which it is. Vin Diesel as the Iron Giant has got to be up to reading the lines in the right way to help us believe in that relationship, which he is. But the huge responsibility for making us engage with that relationship, I think, is on Hogarth, who does 95% of the talking between the two characters, and who we follow through the story. We care about him, we care about his home life, his family, and his journey with the Iron Giant, and they had to find the right voice to make us care and engage, and they did, and he was called Eli Marienthal, and I think the first time we watched it said, goodness me, wasn't that an incredibly strong, emotional, engaging voice performance from this actor playing Hogarth? Let's look him up on the movie database. And we did, and of course the reaction is the same as the character's reaction in American Pie 2 when they're expecting Stifler's mom to turn up at the beach house, and instead they go, oh, it's Stifler's brother. And when we looked up Eli Marienthal, we were like, oh, it's Stifler's brother from the American Pie film series. Wouldn't have expected that particularly, would we? But of course there's no reason why it shouldn't have been him. And then we were remembering, oh yes, he made us laugh in American Pie, didn't he?
Yes, he pops out of the closet and says, you guys are gonna F, aren't you? And that made us laugh.
Yeah, so he's obviously a talented young And I think it's fair to say that some of the best work that's been squeezed out of young actors over the years has been voice work, when they can explore their full skills and potential because they're not self-conscious about being on camera. We have noticed that about some young actors, haven't we? The whole mouse sequence in The Witches, for example.
Yes, another thing is that they haven't got other actors around them and they don't have to worry too much about their timing and they can say the line when they're ready.
That's very true. So I think any potential we see in Eli Marienthal as a film actor is fully realised and built upon in his performance as a voice actor in The Iron Giant. Now, apparently they filmed him doing stuff, moving around while saying some of the lines and reacting to some of the script in order to help with the Hogarth animation, which I think is a very good idea because it will add authenticity to the movements and how they go with the lines being said and acted out by the young actor. But of course the most important thing was that he could inject the right emotions into the lines and make us believe in what he's feeling, or Hogarth's supposed to be feeling, and take us on that journey with him. And goodness me, I find it hard to think of a similarly immersive and comprehensive voice performance as Hogarth in that movie, to completely carry us through on the journey with him so effectively. It's something very special, I think, a very special voice acting performance.
I suppose we don't know which other young actors have the potential to do that with a script as unbearably emotional as The Iron Giant, but certainly they got the right actor for that one.
There's a lot of emotional truth in his performance, and I think that's very important. And as we were saying about the Mysterious Cities of Gold, it's not really something you get in a genuine way from an adult actor playing a child. You could get a very accomplished, very good, very convincing performance from an adult playing a child, but you just won't get the same genuine authenticity from it that you would get from the kind of 12, 13-year-old voice acting performance that Eli Marienthal did for The Iron Giant. So that is the best it could possibly have been, and that's the most important thing, I think, that makes the film so successful, because without that, everything else would fall apart.
Simplicity and purity, as Brian Blessed would say.
He's absolutely right. That's what you want from your actors, particularly your child actors. And your child actors will have it, if you choose the right ones, they will have it in spades. Because they won't have started to overthink things like acting and overdo it and do it too much and make it kind of fake. And if you want to know more about why I'm saying that with such conviction, you'll have to listen to our podcast on The Incredible Hulk, which I'm sure we'll do at some point next year. The Incredible Hulk TV series / TV movies, 1977 to 1990 is what I'm talking about. So we must remember to do that one for you and talk about what I was saying just now. Let's now talk about the denouement of the film. Everything has built up to this emotionally, it's built up practically, the plot is built towards this point where the Iron Giant makes the decision to sacrifice his life in order to save everyone from the nuclear warhead that's coming towards them for various reasons.
Including himself, which possibly is not worth pointing out. But I sometimes think, if everyone's going to die, including you, and you can stop it by just you dying, most people probably would. It's just a thought I have, it's not a very kind thought.
But it's certainly true. But it's very well done, unbearably emotional, the end of the film. And Hogarth, with his whispered, "I love you," as he Iron Giant shoots up into the sky, could come across as...
Hogarth doesn't do that.
No. It could come across as cliched or cringy, but it really doesn't, because of the journey we've been on with Hogarth. It comes across as completely genuine and pure and touching, which is wonderful.
And the funny man at that point has shown himself to be a complete arse by deciding to kill the Iron Giant once everyone's agreed that he's actually not evil and dangerous. And he's got this huge, huge thing about the Russians Russians, and you were saying how he was saying to Hogarth, the first foreign satellite in space, and Hogarth had just said it's the first satellite in space. He wasn't thinking about whether it was foreign or not. And I think that's quite interesting, because is it actually a completely unreasonable attitude, the way that the American media and government was drilling into everybody that they were in a lot of danger from Russia? It's an interesting showcase of that phenomenon.
It certainly is.
But of course, he does pass the point of reasonableness.
Kent Mansley is in some ways as much a victim of propaganda and panic as Hogarth himself, but in some ways Kent Mansley is part of the problem, as he exacerbates it with his actual actions. And then you can see his character as a coward who we thoroughly disapprove of, not even thinking he's doing the right thing anymore, when he's trying to get into the Jeep and escape and leave everyone else to get blown up.
That's right, like Toad Air Marshall and people like that.
I was just thinking that would put him in that group. You're absolutely right. An antagonist who would cause all these bad things to happen with good or bad motives. I mean, Kent Mansley doesn't exactly have bad motives, Toad Air Marshall does, but certainly unthinking motives, and then trying to scupper and leave everyone else to suffer for his mistake. So yes, that certainly fit him into that group. And it again shows the high quality of Christopher McDonald's voice performance, because we can laugh at the Kent Mansley character, we can hate him when he's chloroforming Hogarth, and we can despise him when he's being cowardly and running away. And it all comes together to create the character perfectly. Absolutely brilliant. Now, we've already learned earlier in the movie that one of the Iron Giant's abilities that he's been built with is to self-repair. So whenever bits of him get damaged and fall off, an aerial pops out of his head and summons the broken parts back, and he all joins back together and mends himself, and he probably has nanobot technology to do that, as science fiction usually tells us is the way that that's going to happen in the future.
Yes, and there's a funny scene quite early on, isn't there, where Hogarth is chasing the hand around the house and trying to stop his mom, and Kent Mansley seeing it.
Absolutely brilliant, that. And we go on this wild ride with Hogarth around the house, trying to hide the hand and push it out the bathroom window and stuff. If we didn't believe in Hogarth there and sympathise with him, we wouldn't interact with the film at all, would we? And again there, Jennifer Aniston just has to stand around saying "Mom" stuff, while Eli Marienthal does all the important work for the audience. But there we are, that's just how they wrote the characters. So we might not be surprised when at the very end of the movie it is revealed that the Iron Giant has in fact survived after sacrificing himself, and the body parts are all coming back to the head, which is in the North Pole or something, and eventually, soon, he will get back together and come back to life, as it were, and presumably come back and see Hogarth.
He's been broken up smaller, of course, so the pieces are a screw rather than a hand, so they do tease us a bit by perhaps hinting, well, maybe he can't come back from it this time.
Yes, I think it's quite good. We start with the screw that gets given to Hogarth by the general as a kind of memento. Then it's scurrying off, and Hogarth's going, "I'll see you soon," and we think, "Oh, I hope so." And then you see that a whole leg is jumping along, and you think, "Aha! That's more hope." And then you see the head, and the eyes light up, and he smiles, and it kind of builds up to, oh yes, it's going to be all right.
And I remember when we first watched it, I was feeling unbearably emotional at that point, and I said, thank God for that.
It's quite a relief as an ending, and at least one comment on the movie database finds it a disappointing ending.
These people who want everything to be dark and bleak and death, what do they think, that they're being intelligent and grown up and mature? They're just being pretentious.
I think that's entirely right. And I disagree completely with that comment on the movie database. It takes nothing away from the sacrifice that the Iron Giant makes to give us a hopeful, happy ending. It doesn't change what the giant learned and the journey he went on and the decision he made and the important things we can learn about ourselves and our own feelings, our own lives and decisions. It's rather like when Aslan says he couldn't be sure that he wouldn't die forever on the stone table, so he took the chance, and it doesn't take away from the decision that he didn't die after all. Same with the Iron Giant, isn't it? And what a better ending to have some kind of sense of hope for the future. Ah, yes, it's going to be all right, than, oh, something awful had to happen for it to be all right, and we're always going to be left with that horrible feeling about it. Particularly in a film that's about war, conflict, mistrust, bad things happening because of people being
Jerks.
yeah. So it's much better to have that message of hope at the end, I think, that by doing the right thing, things can be alright.
Yes, life's disappointing enough, Gary, as Miranda says. You don't want your films and your fantasy being all bleak and miserable too.
No, I don't think so.
Like these people who go around with the adult editions of the Harry Potter books saying they don't like the early ones because they're too childish and nobody dies. Don't like those people.
They're probably the same people who make all these posts on the movie database I'm talking about.
Do they also want to know why Elsa has magic powers? Are they all the same people?
Yes, I think they are. They're probably 2 or 3 people. And another thing in this comment was, I think it was the same one, saying that, it's unrealistic anyway, because Hogarth would still want the Iron Giant, he's going to grow up, he's going to have different interests, he doesn't want this giant hanging around with him for the rest of his life. And I thought, what a stupid way of looking at it.
Yeah, if you don't feel that way about your friends and family and pets, do you? Even if your relationship with them changes. You don't want to get rid of them completely.
Exactly. It's not the way to think of the end. It's hope for the future, the end. And that's a very important thing. So basically, structurally, thematically, The Iron Giant is an excellent movie. And it also is in terms of the voice work and the important characters. So that's why we like it quite a lot and thought it was worth doing a podcast. I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast.
Unless you're one of those people whose opinions have been slagging off, in which case you probably didn't enjoy it.
And I hope you've learned something about yourself in that case. But whatever the case, join us again next time for a podcast on the subject of
The Chronicles of Narnia.
Oh, we're doing the Chronicles of Narnia, just as I mentioned Aslan.
Just as you mentioned Aslan, we'll talk about the BBC TV series, and we'll also talk about the 3 movies from not so very long ago. And we'll say a lot of very interesting things about both. Some of them nice, some of them nasty.
Well, that will certainly be very interesting. So join us again for that. Till then, good night out there.
Whatever you are.